I swear to my last breath, I will be saying that fairies are unpredictable. They can be dangerous, territorial, fickle, vengeful. So let's drop all notions of Tinkerbell fairies and let's get real. G'day, I'm Kitty. Welcome to Fairy Encounters. My dad, who was a driver by profession, taught me to drive cautiously, defensively, to never assume that other drivers will do the right thing. And I find that so it is with the fairies. If you stumble upon a fairy, there is a chance that they will be gentle, generous, or even helpful towards you, but it is always safer to be cautious, to assume that they are dangerous and will do you harm. In this video, I share true stories from people who have seen or interacted somehow with dark, dangerous fairies. Now, fair warning, things are going to get weird, and in the last part of the video, we venture into a topic we have never mentioned before, and that is fairies and blood. Now, it's nothing too graphic, but as we're talking dark fairies, let's go there. I used to love just sitting on a swing in my backyard at night and listening to music. One night, just like any other night, around maybe 10 p.m. or so, I decided to go out and sit on the swing. So I gathered my jacket, headphones, a beer, and I walked outside. Immediately upon stepping onto my driveway, I got that weird feeling like I was being watched. Thinking nothing of it because it was nighttime and it was probably just my primitive brain, I turned the corner by the edge of the house and started walking back toward the swing set. Every step that I took, that uneasy feeling got stronger and stronger until it was almost at panicky levels. I could feel it in my stomach. My body suddenly felt very cold. As I got closer to the swings, I started getting more and more nervous, and I literally started walking slower to the point that eventually I just stopped about 10 feet away and was looking around and into the woods. An important thing to note here, as corny as this will inevitably sound, is that I'm 6'1", 195 pounds. There isn't really any wildlife in my area that scares me. Anyways, as I settled down onto the swing, I felt afraid. I had no idea why or of what, and I was just trying to swallow it down. But I knew deep down that I was scared. So anyway, I swing through one song, pausing the music every once in a while to listen to the night around me, which I never usually do. I got through one song and the feeling just kept getting stronger. It wasn't the normal hairs standing up on the back of your neck scared. It literally felt like there was this overwhelming, malicious presence that was just heavy in the air. I swear I could almost feel it just pressing down on me from all around. It was like hateful, and I never used that word because I think it's been cheapened by religious fanatics, but it was evil. There's no way around it. Something bad, really bad, was there. So I got up and turned to swing facing the woods, which I never do or had done, and I got through maybe half of the next song, and somehow this feeling had continued to grow more and more. I've read in books descriptions like bone-chillingly terrifying and too scared to move, and I always kind of shrugged them off as hyperbole. I certainly had never experienced anything even close to that until that night. I was terrified. I literally can't emphasize that enough. I swear to God, I could feel it in my bones and my muscles. I was literally shivering. I've never been worried like that before. In that moment, it hit me like an epiphany. I felt like prey. I couldn't see anything bad out there. I couldn't hear anything or smell anything. But I was completely and utterly scared beyond rationality, like almost on the brink of tears scared. I didn't know why, and I couldn't rationalize it, so I tried to just go on with what I was doing like nothing was up, but it just kept getting, the only way I can think to describe it is heavier and heavier. I turned my music off and just sat, beer forgotten, looking around and at the woods, just completely stock still except my head, refusing to surrender to my baser instincts, despite everything in me telling me to run. It was a warm summer night and I was freezing. I could feel it all the way to my bones, and my stomach was a knot of ice. It was seriously the strangest feeling I've ever had. I could just feel this sense of impending doom and also this utterly malicious presence. It was like a panic attack mixed with that feeling when you know something bad has happened but you don't know what. I've never been more terrified in my life. I literally couldn't take it anymore. I jumped off the swing and sprinted back inside, closed and locked the door, checked all the doors and windows, closed all the curtains, turned on all the lights, and surrounded myself with an arsenal of household weapons in the middle of the living room. I could still feel it, that malicious presence, but it was slowly fading. I didn't sleep that night, which never happens to me. I mean, I can pass out almost at a whim, but I was way too high-strung to sleep or eat or leave the couch. I just sat. No TV, no books, just sat, thinking about what the hell just happened. Well, the next morning, I saw my friend Brandon out by his car, so I walked over and started telling him about it because I was so confused and pretty deeply disturbed by the experience, to be honest. As I'm telling him, he held up a hand and said, hold on, stop right there, come with me." So we went into his house and we walked up to his little sister, Sam. "Hey, Sam, what did I say last night when I came in from running? Why didn't I go running last night?" And she looked at us weird and said something to the effect of, "You felt like something was off and you didn't feel safe." Brandon lives 2 houses down from me, and apparently he had walked outside to stretch before his run, and he felt a weird vibe, he said. And as he walked to the end of his driveway, it got stronger and he started getting really nervous. He started running, he said, and stopped after just a few feet, turned his music off, and scanned the woods around. Then he started running again, got to my driveway, and was so scared and uncomfortable and freaking out that he just decided to call it quits for the night. And when we were talking about it the next day, after talking to his sister, he literally said that he felt like a prey animal being stalked by something evil. Exactly how I'd felt. Well, everyone always kind of laughs it off when we tell them this story, or thinks we somehow colluded and matched our stories up, but he specifically took me in to talk to Sam before I even spoke, so that I'd know there was no BS. I have absolutely no idea what it was in those woods, and it hasn't happened again since, and it was like 3 years ago now. Anyway, now I only swing facing the woods, and I carry a bat down there with me, just in case. I was hiking through the remnants of a remote, long abandoned town and the surrounding area. To get as far into the woods as I was, you had to cross fallen trees over a creek 3 times. I had just crossed the 3rd bridge, as it were, and was about 5 miles in, and something blue caught my eye just ahead of me. There was a man in his 60s at least, with a strange-looking face. He was wearing blue satin pajamas and sitting in a tree. The closer I got to him, the louder he laughed. It wasn't a maniacal laugh, but it set off all the alarms in my head nevertheless. He also wasn't wearing any shoes, and he looked strangely well-groomed or clean. I gave him a friendly nod as I passed, and he just kept on laughing. Then it stopped. I turned to look, and he was gone. There was no branch cracking or plants rustling, nothing. He was just gone. This still rubs me the wrong way. You know, the area I was in was a pretty rough hike. It was very secluded. Not very many people could venture as deep as I was into the woods that day. So I don't know what he was. One time I was having a weekend sleepover at a friend's house. This house was at the end of a cul-de-sac, and the back was surrounded by trees. One afternoon we were having a barbecue pool party, and we were admiring the scenery of the surrounding area because it was particularly beautiful that day. Then, just as me and my friend Addie were getting out of the pool, we saw a tall, skinny, dark green creature that looked like it had moss and flowers on it. It ran by, scared the hell out of us. It ran along between the pool and the tree line. Now, that was the only time that we saw it, but for the next few days, we heard this clicking sound and a weird, pained screech every few hours from within those trees. But the sound stopped at night. It was only ever during the day. And incidentally, it rained for the next few days, which was really strange for that time of year there. A Cornishman called Noy met his dead sweetheart among the fairy hordes. That evening he had set out for the nearby inn. Now, Noy was known as a serious, reliable man, and when 3 days had passed and he hadn't returned home, his servants raised the alarm and set out to look for him. That same day, he was discovered in a ruined barn, hungry and confused. He was amazed to discover that he had been missing for 3 days. He said he had got lost on the moor trying to take a shortcut to the inn, and had stumbled upon a farmhouse where there was a harvest home supper. When he entered this farmhouse, he saw hundreds of richly dressed people feasting, but noticed that they all looked rather small. He was staggered then to recognise among them his former sweetheart, Grace Hutchins, dead 4 long years now. He knew then that the company inside the house were fairies. Grace warned him not to touch her, not to eat the fairy food or drink the cider, or he would be unable to leave. Mr. Noy believed that he knew a way to rescue them both. He took his hedging gloves from his pocket, turned them inside out, and threw them among the fairies, who then vanished, taking Grace with them. I remember very well that there was a woman of the village of Kirchhoff who was called Vivian. She was the mother of a family. When she had her first child, a very strong and very pretty boy, she noticed one morning that he had been changed during the night. There was no longer the fine baby she had put to bed in the evening. There was, instead, an infant hideous to look at, greatly deformed, hunchbacked and crooked. The poor woman knew that a fae had entered the house during the night and had changed her child. This changed infant still lives, and today he is about 70 years old. He has all the possible vices, and he tried many times to kill his mother. He is a veritable demon. He often predicts the future and has a habit of running abroad during the night. They call him the Little Corrigan, and everybody flees from him. Being poor and infirm now, he has been obliged to beg, and people give him alms because they have a great fear of him. His nickname is Olier. Now this woman, Vivian, had a second, then a third child, both of whom was seen by everybody to have been born with no infirmity, and in time each of these two was stolen by the fae and replaced by a horrid little hunchback. The second child had been a most beautiful daughter. She was taken during the night and replaced by a little girl babe, so deformed that it resembled a ball. If her brother Olier was bad, she was even worse. She was the terror of the village, and they called her Arniac. The third child met the same luck, but was not so bad as the first and second. The poor mother, greatly worried at seeing what had happened, related her troubles to another woman, and this woman said to her, "If you have another child, place with it in the cradle a little sprig of boxwood which has been blessed, and the fae will no longer have the power of stealing your children." And when a fourth child was born to the unfortunate woman, it was not stolen, for she had placed in the cradle a sprig of boxwood which had been blessed on Palm Sunday. The first 3 children I knew very well, and they were certainly hunchbacked. It is believed in this country that the fays who come at night to make changelings always leave in exchange hunchbacked infants. It is equally believed that a mother who has had her child so changed need do nothing more than leave the little hunchback out of doors crying during an entire day, and that the fae, hearing it, will come and put the true child in its place. Unfortunately for Vivian and people of the village, she did not know what she should have done in order to have her own children again. About 3 miles from Cloggan stands a fairy tree on a hill. It is a blackthorn bush, and the fruit it bears are very tiny, and nobody, even the birds or animals, eat of the fruit of that tree, as they are supposed to be poison. For many years, a little bag resembling a bag of blood hung from this fairy tree. Nobody dared to touch it, as they were afraid lest anything should happen to them by the fairies. But one day, an old man who did not believe that the fairies could harm him took the bag of blood from the tree and threw it over the fence. In the following days, his hand, the hand he used to move the blood, became sore and eventually rotted away. There lived a man in Lowtown, a fellow called Patrick Kelly. One night he was coming home from the fair of Kildare. It was late in the night, and on his way Kelly had to pass through a laneway. When he was passing, he looked up the lane and he saw on the ground 3 dishes of blood and many little fairies dancing in each one. Kelly rushed home, told of what he had seen, and only lived 3 hours afterwards. A man named Pat Caden owned some land in Carrowkillen where there is a shrubbery and in which there is an ancient burial ground. There are beautiful headstones and tombstones to be seen there to this day. The contractors of a nearby bridge went to him and asked him to sell them the stones, but he refused. It was not the value he'd been offered for the stones, but on account of them being graves. He did not like having anything to do with them, as they were carved and left there by the hands of people. One day Pat Caden left for a fair in Crossmolina. When the contractor heard he would be gone for several days, he sent his men with carts to take away the headstones. And this they did. On that same day, they were dressing one of these stones, and it broke, and it burst out with blood. You can imagine how shocked they were. In the morning, the stones that had been taken away were left back in the same place, in such a way that a person would think they had never been removed at all. The stones themselves, though, were covered with blood, and it was thought that the blood would remain on them ever after. There was also blood along the road from Caden's land to the bridge that was being built. The local belief is that the fairies from some other district and the fairies that dwelled at the stones at Caden's had a fight, and that was the cause of the blood in the stones. There was a man named Martin Killeen living in Church Village. As he was coming from visiting a neighbour one night very late, he had to cross a ditch to get into the next field. He saw 2 men standing at the step where he was coming out, and one of the men walked over to him and said, "You cannot cross here tonight." And he told him to go to the other end of the field, that he would see 2 more men standing at the other step and that they would let him out. Then he went down there and they let him out, but as he passed them, they told him to come back again before the sun would rise, and that he would see a great sight. Killeen did go back before the sun got up, and he saw the fields covered in blood and cuts of bread here and there. By the middle of the morning, though, the field was the same as it had ever been, and Killeen knew then that it was the fairies who had been there. I knew a man, when I was in my 20s it was, who was building a house close near to a fort. No manner of advice would he take to persuade him against building there, for he was resolved. Well, when he had it about half built, he came to the house this one day and found it was covered with blood. I remember it well. There was blood everywhere, all over the wood and stone. The people believed that it was the fairies who put the blood there, and the man never finished the building of that house afterwards. The remains of it are there to this day. There was a woman living in Kilvalla who had a big washing of sheets to do. She washed them, then spread them out on the bushes on the outside of a fairy fort for them to dry. In the morning, she went back to the fort to collect the sheets, only to find that the sheets were all sprinkled with blood. She got sick that night and died a few days after. One night, in the hour of 12, there was a man coming home from a fair, and he had to pass by a boreen, a narrow lane, on the way. The moon was shining very brightly that night, and as he was passing by the boreen, Mullins was his name, well, he looked up, and what did he see but many little fairies dancing around in a ring in the field beside. He was very much afraid when he saw them, for he knew it was dangerous to see the fairies. He pushed his horse to move quickly to get away and home. When he got home, he went straight into bed, and when he woke the next morning, he found himself feeling very ill. He got out of bed to get a drink of water, and when he went down to the kitchen, he saw, sitting on the table, a dish full of blood, and another beside it with water in it, and little fairy men were in the bowl of blood. Poor Mullins got a terrible fright. He took the drink of water, rushed back to his room and got back into bed. He got very sick then, and by midday was dead. At night, the fairies came into a house in Glen Rushen to bake, a thing they were off to do. The family, though, had not remembered to put water out for them, and a beggar man who had been left lodging on the sofa downstairs by the hearth heard the fairies say, "We have no water, so we'll take blood out of the toe of the servant who forgot our water." And from the girl's blood they mixed their dough. Then they baked their cakes, ate most of them, and poked pieces of cake up under the thatched roof. The next day the servant girl fell ill and was ill for weeks until the old beggar man returned to the house. He cured her with a bit of the fairy's own cake, which he reached up and took from under the thatch. There is an island in the Shannon, and if a mermaid is seen sitting on the rocks in the sunshine, the people know that a crime has been committed somewhere near, for she never appears but to announce ill luck. She has a spite against mortals and rejoices at their misfortunes. One day, a young fisherman was drawn by the current towards the island, and he came on a long streak of red blood and had to sail his boat through it till he reached the rocks where the mermaid was seated, and then the boat went round and round as in a whirlpool and sank down at last under the waves. Still, he did not lose consciousness. He looked round and saw that he was in a beautiful place with tall plants growing all over it, and the mermaid came and sang sweetly to him and offered him wine to drink. But he would not taste it, he said, for it was red like blood. Then he looked down, and to his horror he saw a soldier lying on the floor with his throat cut, and all round him was a pool of blood. He remembered no more till he found himself again in his boat, drifting against a hurricane, and suddenly he was dashed upon a rock, where his friends who were in search of him found him and carried him home. There he heard a strange thing. A soldier, a deserter from the Athlone barracks, being pursued, had cut his throat and flung himself over the bridge into the river. And this was the very man the young fisher had seen lying a corpse in the mermaid's cave. After this he had no peace or comfort till he went to the priest, who exorcised him and gave him absolution. Only then the wicked siren of the rocks troubled him no more, though she still haunts the islands of the Shannon and still tries to lure victims to their death. There you have it, the dark side of fairies. It's real, and if you live near or within nature, they are closer than you think. If you enjoyed this video, please consider buying me a coffee. This really helps support the channel. The link is in the notes below. But if this isn't something that you can do, no worries at all. Just a sweet thumbs up really helps support the channel within the vast universe that is YouTube. Please know that I really appreciate your support. I'll be back in 2 weeks with a shiny new video. So until then, stay curious. Cheerio.